Every story needs a villain. When it comes to the story of UFOs, the role of that villain is usually taken by the government. In this story, the government is sometimes seen as a single, monolithic entity, while other times there's the suggestion that some sort of cabal exists within government managing UFO secrets. In either case, a central belief among many in the UFO community is that a conspiracy exists to cover up the truth about an extraterrestrial presence. I have a somewhat different perspective on all this. I served for 21 years as a civilian employee of the United Kingdom's Ministry of Defense, MOD, and in the 1990s I was assigned to a division where my duties included researching and investigating the UFO phenomenon. In this chapter, I'm going to use my previous experience to give readers an insight into why and how governments investigate UFOs and the sorts of conclusions we reach. Some of this won't be popular, so perhaps this chapter can be seen as a sort of minority report, and if the government is perceived as being the villain of the UFO story, perhaps that makes me the villain of this book. Even if I am the villain, I still have a story to tell. The first point to make is that governments look at the UFO phenomenon in a rather different way than the UFO community. They consider the topic, as they consider most issues, in the context of threats and opportunities. It's worth looking at this in a little detail because this mindset contextualizes much of what follows. It may surprise people to know that there's an equation that defines threat often used in various government, military, and intelligence community agencies. Threat is expressed as capability times intent. As an aside, risk is sometimes defined as probability times harm. When it comes to UFOs, we have some good data on capability. Not just eyewitness testimony from pilots, but radar data, FLIR, forward-looking infrared, films from military aircraft, and the associated mass-int, measurement and signature intelligence data from such films. Simply put, this data suggests an impressive capability, with very high speeds, rapid acceleration, and extreme maneuvers being frequently seen. In the context of our equation, this gives us a high value for capability. With intent, however, we quickly run into an obvious problem, namely a lack of definitive data in a situation where there are multiple competing theories about the nature of the UFO phenomenon. As a further complication, sightings would have to be individually assessed because different incidents will likely have different causes. Some UFO sightings, for example, will be attributable to misidentifications of drones, meaning that intent could be assigned a value. Other sightings, however, will have no obvious explanation, which raises the question of how we could even begin to define intent. If we were dealing with technology from Russia or China, intelligence officers specializing in these countries could simply assess intent, drawing on their existing knowledge. But if we're dealing with something unknown, possibly even extraterrestrial, we can't even begin to make any assessment of intent. Thus, going back to our equation, no accurate value for intent can be given. So, if intent is unknown, even with good information about capability, no meaningful assessment of threat can be given. The threat is unknown. This quote from a 1997 MOD document illustrates the thinking perfectly. The second and critical question is, do UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, represent a possible threat to the defense of the realm? We could debate that, assuming for the sake of argument that something exists, they have never shown any hostile intent and therefore cannot represent a threat. However, Russian aircraft attempting to penetrate the UK ADR, air defense region, in the Cold War never showed hostile intent, but they certainly represented a threat. Thus, the only logical conclusion that we can come to is that we do not know if UAPs represent a threat to the defense of the realm. We cannot eliminate the possibility.